Shally Overton with us. She's been astrologer for last 45 years, and for 30 years she's doing the professional astrology in, she calls Western astrology, although I feel the big similarity, both are very similar almost.
Yeah.
So you are originally from Denver, but right now you're in Orlando. So
Yep.
uh, let's start. I mean, learning about the astrology and how you got interested and fascinated about the astrology.
Oh, I love telling this. I got interested in astrology when I was 12, and it's because I was trying to understand boys. And I think that's probably still the reason I do it. Um, yeah, I went to the B. Dalton bookseller and found a book on Virgo, which is my sun sign. And it was a really good book because it included the rising signs of every rising sign. And what it did was, I'm not sure, I mean, you have to understand that Jay and I are just kind of learning how much each other knows and what overlaps. So, Jay, I don't really know in Vedic astrology how the rising signs relate, but we have 12 rising signs in Western, and all the zodiac signs. So the book that I got, it told all 12 houses of each sign, of each rising sign. So it was extremely thorough. It was like, 144, whatever 12 times 12 is. A lot of information about astrology. And I looked up everybody I knew, and it was also accurate. It just kept motivating me to continue on. And I've studied it ever since.
So you're saying that it takes 45 years to understand the boys, and still you're
Pretty much.
trying to learn about it?
No. Yeah, it's really interesting because I'm really self-taught. I've read many books, and I've listened to astrologers on podcasts and vlogs, and I just ingest a lot of information. And so everything I do was very organic. And I started out just learning about Virgo, and then I learned about the signs of all my other friends and family, and then I would go through the zodiac, and then I learned to create a chart. And because there weren't really computer generated charts back then, I did it all manually. And so I think I bought an ephemeris, and I went into the ephemeris. It went back to, I want to say 1900. And I looked up all the people I knew, and I did their charts from the ephemeris and I taught myself how to create a chart and then read the chart. And so it's all very self-taught. It's the kind of person I am.
What city ephemeris was that one? Was it a city specific?
Oh my gosh. I honestly couldn't tell you. It's probably, I think it was GMT, so London.
So now when you look it back, so what, from astrological point of view, what made you to get interested into the astrology from your house perspective?
Like as a profession?
Sorry?
As a profession, or just to continue?
No, just from looking back in your chart, like there might be some significance of planetary position, or from astrological aspects, like what to be.
Yeah, so my chart has a really strong stellium in the Aquarius house, and Aquarius rules astrology. I have my sun there, my Mercury there, Uranus, which rules that house and rules astrology, and then I have Pluto, and I have Pluto and Uranus next to each other in my chart. So Mercury rules thought and communication, so it's what I think about. Uranus rules astrology, and it's at 10 degrees Virgo, and my sun is 17 Virgo, so they're only 7 degrees apart. And then Pluto gives me kind of a great psychological energy. And the fact that it's all in Virgo, I have a really natural way of taking complex concepts and making them understandable and grounded so people can really ingest the information easier. Like I'm a teacher. So yeah, I think that astrologically is what motivates me to astrology.
So how was the reaction of your family or surrounding at the time, like when you told them I'm interested in the astrology? So what they said?
Yeah, it was interesting because I started looking into astrology at 12, and I gave up going to Catholic church at 13 So right about the same time, I was very spiritually seeking, which interestingly is also the general vicinity of a Jupiter return, which rules higher understanding and spirituality. So right at that time, I've been raised Catholic, and I don't think my parents, my mother in particular, she never really liked my alternative interests, art, astrology, but it's so quintessentially who I am. Those are, I would say, if I introduce myself to someone, I am an astrologer or I am an artist. It's my parents, or my mom in particular, I think she was cautiously accepting because they were pretty accepting growing up. It's only when I got older that they started getting much more temperamental about the things that they're exposed to. But I'm a very independent type thinker, and so they really don't have much choice, honestly.
So you mean to become an astrologer over here in the Western world, you have to be very independent, rebellion, people won't be accepting, those kind of things?
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's a difference growing up in America, being an astrologer, versus India and having an interest in astrology, because growing up in America, astrology is akin to saying, I believe in the devil, I think, a lot of times. And I think the most people are really exposed. Well, in my range of years that I grew up, the 70s, 80s, and 90s, astrology was what I think a lot of people looked at their horoscopes, but that's about it. And they don't really understand how astrology works, or what it is that, is the interest. I guess, like, I explain to people that a chart is basically the sky flattened out around the earth. That's what I'm looking at. And the planets are the planets going around the sun, and I don't even think people give it that step. I mean, the general public, of course, there are people who are interested in it, but the general public, they're just not interested, so they don't really conceive of what it means. And it's really not that abstract. It's just look up in the sky and see the moon. Oh, wow, what part of the sky is the moon in tonight? That kind of thing, only with all the planets. So,
do you see any changes in this set of mentality in 45 years?
Oh, yeah. And I expected it, because we just went into Pluto and Aquarius within the last year. And this is the first time in Western astrology, Pluto's been in Aquarius for 260 years. It was there at this exact degree at 0 Aquarius during the Civil War, or let me think, the Revolutionary War. America was founded on Pluto and Aquarius, basically like 29 degrees Capricorn, but we grew as a country with Pluto and Aquarius. That was the first influential sign. And so when Pluto was at the last degrees of Capricorn in the last 4 or 5 years, it was at 26, 27, 28, 29. That's when we see all this intense upheaval in society and shifting of our systems and our conscious great structure and organization. And then Aquarius is very much expansive mindset. It rules genius, it rules eccentricity and, technology. People like Elon Musk and the internet kind of started to rise up in the last 30 years, right as we got to the cusp of the age of Aquarius. So yeah, I think there are a tremendous number of new youth who are very interested in astrology because it's embedded in their charts when they're born. So, the Aquarian energy with Neptune and Uranus were around the millennium change is when Uranus and Neptune were in Aquarius. So, yeah, real strong energy for astrology now versus then.
So basically the return of the Pluto after 220 years changes again, everything's reset to zero, and it starts
Pisces.
Age again.
Yeah. So I have 0 degree Saturn in Pisces, so my career is right between Aquarius and Pisces, and until I was 54, so from 0 to 54, my Saturn was retrograde in Aquarius. And at 54, it went direct, and now it's heading towards Pisces. I don't think it'll actually get into Pisces by progression, but by birth, it was at 0 Pisces. So when Pluto hits 0 Pisces in 2046, it's right around 2044, somewhere in there, it's going to be an awakening of more of an intuitive energy. And I think we're already on the precipice of that anyway. That's what Aquarius is doing, making us much more intellectually aware. And when it goes into Pisces, we get very emotionally connected. But right now we're psychically connected is kind of what we're waking up to in the next 20 years.
Do you see yourself for next 20 years? Because I hear in astrological world that lots of things changing, and even there's a possibility of the world war in next 5-6 years.
I don't believe in the world war, another world war. And part of that is because I'm very into like people who channel. And I think channeling is going to kind of take rise, so to speak, in the next 20 years as well. And if you're not familiar with channeling, I mean, you maybe are, I don't know if your audience is, but channeling is when you go into a kind of a trance and you bring through conscious energy that we don't see. And it could be a spirit or it could be a higher being. And people like Abraham, which is the law of attraction, or Bashar, or Lee Carroll channels Cryon. So I watch a lot of those type of people who have great information. I have read all of the Jane Roberts books, which really kind of got me into all of the channeling stuff. And Seth Speaks. I don't know if you're familiar with that at all, but Seth Speaks talks about Jane Roberts, who was a woman in the late 1960s, basically meditating and opening up to this higher being called Seth, who explained what all goes on, like for me, what is the nature of reality? And that's actually one of the books that I read. And so because of that,
Like S-A-T-Y-A?
S-E-T-H, Seth.
Okay.
Yeah, S-E-T-H Speaks. And because of that, because of my perspective metaphysically or spiritually, and I'm also a Buddhist, I definitely believe that what you focus on, there are infinite realities, and it's all part of the now. In other words, we're all seeing the same now energy. We're just kind of going from different points of view as we move. So in other words, our animation process just puts us in different points of view, like shining a light through a film frame, and when the film moves, it's like we're animated. That is that kind of energy. So I don't believe that we're going to have another world war. I think that we are at a moment of change and shift, and I think that definitely the new generation that's coming in understands a brighter perspective, and I think that I think it's a lot. It's kind of a storyline we've been sold as a mass media event. If you look at how many apocalypse movies have been made in the last 40 years, it's unbelievable. I can't believe they're still making them, but they still make them, and it's just so redundant. But I really don't believe we're going to have it. And I think that's just a storyline sold to the masses to keep them in fear.
So I'm glad you were talking about the movies. So
Mm-hmm.
the Marvel movies, they adopt these ideas about the astrology in different perspective. Like especially if you see Doctor Strange movies, 10 dimensions and everything folding and all those things happening there, how the movie is long. So and that mass people, they watch all those shows, but still they have perception about the astrology that is not real or it's a voodoo kind of thing.
In the movies?
No, the movies they watch, so they are
Oh.
familiar with the concepts, but still astrology, they don't have a very good view about that one in Western world.
Yeah. I also think that, I mean, it sounds paranoid to me, but I've spent recent times kind of integrating my point of view because I get asked questions like that. And I just think that we're so on the precipice of going from ego to a higher understanding of spirit that there are a lot of people seeking understanding about questions like that. And I absolutely believe with groups like the Masons. The Masons were a really strong group that supported a lot of politicians when the country was founded. And they believed in astrology. And we discussed this the other day, they laid out Washington, D.C. on the Virgo constellation. And they absolutely wrote the Constitution, and the Declaration of Independence was signed based on astrology. So the forefathers, the founding forefathers of this country, were astrologers. And I think you also mentioned that people in power do astrology, and they make it so that the masses don't believe in it. They intellectually challenge it. But back when astrology was first coming about, astronomy and astrology were part of the same group. You know, the higher elite thinkers of time were astrologers as well. So I think we're coming back around to that. And I think it's been an era of really trying to suppress the knowledge and wisdom of astrology. But yeah, sorry, I'm very wordy with your answer.
That one, because they tried to suppress the knowledge of astrology for the mass people, but it was useful. Because nowadays, the advantage of internet, if you Google it, like British in Second World War or even First World War, they have a team of astrologers, but they used to tell public, don't use astrology, because they didn't want this technology to be used by or believed by the mass. So otherwise,
Yeah.
people will be again independent thinker, or they'll have more ambitions, those kind of things. So just as a tool for suppressing, it could be like that.
Mhm.
So what do you advise for the beginners to how they can start learning astrology?
Well, I have a book on astrology. It's called Learn Astrology on my website, which is angeliczodiac.com. But I have podcasts. I think you said you had podcasts, but we both do different types of astrology. So I think for me, I mean, I've been exposed to Vedic astrology, but I've tried to look into learning it, and it framework than I was used to. And it's been a little bit difficult for me to really understand the ins and outs. So it's great that I am able to talk to you, and maybe you could teach me more about it and understand it. But yeah, I think go with what you want, what you desire. That's my key point, is like, if you're interested in your sign, go research your sign. If it leads to more research, that find podcasts, find YouTube channels, things like that, books.
I see, I mean, it's not different, two different things, Western or Eastern, because if you plot anyone's chart, you see, no matter it's a Western one or the Vedic one, you'll see exactly similar degree of planets sitting in the similar, those signs. So it will be so similar. Only interpretations are different, just like, I mean, when you're doing a medical science or the operations here or some other countries, there will be some differences. But the planets are still there. Those are the planets itself. So but some of them, they do see, I mean, interpret, just like, I mean, all the doctors, they become different. So they see from different perspective. And some of them, they give the weightage for some particular planets more, or the houses, or how it is sitting, based on their experience. But I believe, I mean, I see some big similarity, or started from the same place actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, there, even within Western astrology, you have, you know, over a dozen immediately available formats to interpret where the planets are. So I think for the audience's sake, I just want to explain that Eastern astrology, which is yours, Vedic, is based on the actual position of the planets against the constellations currently, right? And Western is based on the seasons, so that the beginning of spring is always 0 degrees Aries, and it goes in alignment with the other cardinal signs for the seasons. So because of that, and the precession of the equinox, which is a process of movement in the sky, that has changed. So we started out on the same page, but then it shifted over time. And so Vedic looks at it, and the system of Vedic astrology is accurate to the physical position of the planets, where Western is more of the collective consciousness and what we assign to that energy within the year. So, and they both work. They both can interpret information accurately. So,
Actually, in Vedic astrology, they divide it in several different parts, and one is called the Varsafal, which is based on the annual things you look at that one. Then
mhm,
mundane astrology is more for when you're interpreting as a for the nation's predictions or the society, those kind of stuff. Medical astrology is also very separate. So although it comes everything from same, just like when you have to do the medical science, you have to do MBBS for 4 years, then you go on this specialization.
mhm,
So they this is a muhurta. So muhurta is also completely based on like particular time itself. Like every day also you can find what is a particular specific time is more auspicious for starting something, because each things like operations will be for a different time will be more auspicious because there'll be influence of Mars or Saturn or those kind of stuff. Same thing for
mhm.
educations will be more like Sun and Jupiter. So those particular muhurta you can find it out. Same thing. So that's why, but in general, when public see just as a chart and start interpreting all those things, but that's not just astrology. It's just like anyone you'll see ills that you will start interpreting. Oh, just get a paracetamol or those kind of medicine. But medical science is way advanced when you start going into the deep and start, uh, narrowing down and researching on that one. So it's very different. So that's like the Vedic astrology. So
Right.
like they have a Bharati Vidya Bhavan in India. They have a courses for 2 years,
Mhm.
but there are
Who takes the courses? Is it if you're interested, or
that's the
are
first
many people taking this? Like, how do you get the people to go?
that's the first criteria. Whoever is interested, then only they can do it. Just like when
Okay,
they
it's
have,
not part of your general education.
yeah, just general education also, yeah, it's not part of like a 10th or 12th. It's a separate one. It's a
Okay.
specializations things. So
Oh, okay.
anyone, even you can. There are lots of American people also. There are American astrologer who had studied from there, and it's
Mhm.
been like 20, 30 years, and they have started schools here, or they write on into the astrological journals. So many people they got good benefits out of that, and
Oh,
many books where the teachers from that institute itself, they wrote many books. Like one of those books is like this one,
oh, okay.
Introduction to Astrology, but
Oh, yeah.
I have like tons of books full of astrology over there, and
Mhm.
tons of books means like not it's not like for one thing only. It's keep repeating. So that's why it shows like how vast this knowledge is, and it still keep going
Yeah.
on. And I mean, like right now, I still don't know very much about the medical astrology. Then medical astrology will lead you again to the Ayurveda. Then same thing.
Yeah. That interests me. I would love to know more about that. That's cool.
And Vastu also, those also again from the general astrology, then you will start going to that direction. And
Mhm.
what I heard so far, like the fourth house becomes like you have to start seeing it with a higher magnified telescope to the fourth house, which will give you analysis about the Vastu. But again, finally it's about these planets itself.
Mhm.
So, and that's also different technique has been introduced. Like this is called the gochar. I was showing you. So annual basis on the annual planets where they are right now. So those
Mhm.
are called the transient or the gochars.
Okay.
So, but gochars doesn't have the full effect of basically. So those normally they consider like a 10% or itself, or like when in even though your main phase or subphase are not going on, but in the gochar those planets are into that place or at that area, so they are like messenger at that time, so they'll be influencing to certain aspects of your astrology. But anyway, today we are talking about more about you, so how people can get benefited with astrology.
Uh-huh. What would you like to know?
So Western astrology is part of everything, or you see just specific to the person, or you start seeing about the
Well,
country,
you can
place.
do general astrology, and there are many people who just have, and I have done weekly podcasts on what's going on during the week.
Hmm.
And then, of course, if somebody wants to know more what's going on in their personal lives, I do private readings for that. I started my podcast, which was, I think, 2010 or maybe a little 2008, somewhere in there. I would bring on people. I had it on blogtalkradio.com, and you could bring in callers. So I had a lot of callers back then, and I would read the chart from the people who called in wanting to know. And so I got a lot. I've done a lot of readings. And so you can take the time of birth, the place of birth, and get the information, the birth date, place, and time, and put it with what's going on in the sky currently. And it'll tell you what you're interacting with based on what you know about yourself and what's going on currently. Or if you just do a general reading, you just take what's going on at the moment you're doing the reading and look at where the planets are in the chart, in the Western chart. So, you can divide it up based on what planets rule what particular thing. You can look at love planets, you can look at marriage planets. I do asteroids too. Juno, the asteroid Juno rules marriage. And so I look into that. And then you can look at the parts of fortune, the Arabic parts of fortune. I mean, you can keep expanding further and further. I also have looked into financial astrology. I look at stocks. Personally, I will do a chart for the founding of a company I'm interested in, like Apple or Etsy. And I look at what is going on with them. That's why I know every time something goes on with Mercury, Facebook is affected, because it actually I think it went out as an IPO when Venus was in Gemini or retrograde in Gemini. There was something connected to Mercury with Venus. This is off the top of my head, so I don't have it right here. But every time Mercury goes retrograde, it's some kind of technological glitch, or they go out, or there's a blackout, or something isn't working right. And that happened with Instagram, which is owned by Facebook, recently, when some of the planets went into Aquarius, which is also a more intense energy of the energy of Mercury. So, I really am fascinated by kind of financial astrology, but I could do medical too. I just haven't gotten deeply into it, but I do follow a medical astrologer. I get newsletters and stuff.
So, I think just yesterday or day after yesterday, that Facebook was attacked or was shut down or something. So,
Instagram was on yesterday morning too.
So is it like something you can see even 30 years back, what had happened in someone's life? Or
oh yeah. So I have a Scorpio rising, and the ruler in Western astrology. So there's a dual rulership of Scorpio, and also a couple other signs have more than one rulership. But I always go with Mars is the traditional ruler of Scorpio, but I like Pluto. I think Pluto, it's a newer planet having been discovered, but it takes the mystery of Scorpio and really extrapolates more into it than Mars. I see Mars as the warrior, and Pluto is more of a strategic, psychological energy. And so having that Scorpio energy in my chart, I tend to look for where, because it's such a significant shift of energy going from Capricorn to Aquarius in the last couple of years with retrograde and direct motion, it's just really potent. We're all in the world really experiencing this huge shift. It is the age of Aquarius. And so I'll look at someone's chart and see where that Pluto is affecting them. And I've had clients who have it at their midheaven, which is really significant. I have one client, Pluto is going dancing back and forth across her midheaven, and she is which is the fame point in the zodiac. And she's actually been on national television recently on a reality show. So, and she's kind of getting her career going in modeling as well. But, it's very significant to her chart. Pluto falls right on the rising sign or the horizon of my son's chart. He has a 0-degree Aquarius rising. So Pluto's right on the moment he was born, because he was born at a specific time. That specific time was 0-degree Aquarius rising, and he was premature. He was induced, and he had a very traumatic birth. So seeing Pluto, one of the most intense, life-changing planets, hit the horizon of my son's chart is kind of concerning, honestly. And fortunately, he's really rolling with it, and he's discovering more of his spiritual self. So it's really fascinating to see just how directly the planets do affect people, especially on very strong points in their charts.
Yeah. So like in Vedic, they define more specific. Like there are three categories: dual character, and fixed or movable. And not only that, like there are 27 constellations. So uh, each sign will have three constellations. So especially in the Scorpio, there'll be three called Vasista, Asilesa, and Jet, no, Jesta, Asilesa, and no, Jesta was the last one. So each one has different rulerships. So Vasista has rulership of Jupiter, then Saturn, and then Mercury. So each one has like each constellation is 13 degree 20 minutes, but divided into four parts. So each one will have 2.5 degree basically.
Wow. Yeah. So in Western astrology, each 30 degrees of the chart wheel, so it's 12 different houses, has 10 degrees each. So they're decans, and those each are ruled by the next sign of that particular element. So Virgo, if you're looking at Virgo, say my Virgo sun is 17 degrees Virgo. The first 10 is Virgo, the next 10 is Capricorn, and the last 10 is Taurus. So I'm in the Capricorn decan of Virgo, which makes me ambitious towards what's in that decan, and 10 degrees, that's where my Uranus is, right on the 10-degree mark of the Capricorn. So it's career. Yeah. So we kind of have a breakdown similar, but I mean, the fact that we can break it down further, and we have other things assigned, but not necessarily the exact same system. It's a lot.
If more we study, then we'll start finding like more similarity. Like it's just different way of interpretations.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Outside it looks very different, but again, I mean, once you go detail in depth towards the fundamentals, it starts becoming the same. So why you have lotus behind you?
Pardon me?
Why you have lotus painting behind you?
Why do I have a lotus painting? Well, I have that partly because this apartment has a lot of wall space, and it's a very big painting. I'll show you real quick.
The question is why lotus
only? It is. It's a big painting. So it takes up a nice amount of space above the couch, and it's my painting. I painted it. So
it could have been anything. It could have been tiger. It could have been just building. Why is lotus?
Because I'm Buddhist, and the lotus is a symbol of Buddhism. And it's very important. I've got another one around the corner, a watercolor of a lotus flower around the corner.
And why is the symbol of Buddhism in the lotus in Buddhism?
Are you you know the answer to this? I know you know the answer to this.
Buddhism came as a branch of the, Sanatan Dharma or Vedas. So they took lots of things, but they interpreted in a totally different way. Buddhism, basically, lotus, like Vishnu is one of the biggest things. He the whole universe. So Vishnu, you'll see his picture always laying on the lotus. So
the lotus flower grows out of the mud, and so the mud, well, while it's kind of gross to think about being in the muck and the grunge, it's very rich in nutrients, and so it kind of is a symbol of coming out of the darkness and the muck and coming into the light and blooming, and what is the word? I've got the word right on the tip of my tongue. Emerging out into the light. And so it's like this symbol of your soul coming out and emerging from the difficulty that we have within our souls of suffering. And Buddhism is based on overcoming suffering or understanding human suffering. So that's what Siddhartha, the original Buddha, really, it's the point of the whole practice of Buddhism is getting beyond suffering.
Few different Buddha, original Buddha and other Buddha.
Well, so Siddhartha Gautama was the original Buddha and is, of course, the founder in philosophy of all Buddhism. But my particular branch of Buddhism is based on a man named Nichiren Daishonin, who was the monk in Japan in 1272, who studied all the different sutras, which are considered chapters of all the teachings of Siddhartha. And since 1272, he was really seeking to understand what the true nature of Buddhism was. What is the core teaching of Buddhism? And so in doing that, he decided to read all the different texts of all the different types of Buddhism that he could, expose himself to, pretty much everything that was there, and came to the conclusion that the Lotus Sutra, which is also another nod to the lotus flower, the Lotus Sutra the title is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, but it is basically a dedication to cause and effect, which is what it means. Dedication to the mystic law of cause and effect through sound, which is Kyo. And so in saying Nam-myoho Renge Kyo as a chant or a mantra, which you're familiar with, I'm sure, you polish your life, you raise your vibration, because we're an energetic people. And as you chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, you align yourself with the rhythm of cause and effect, which is karma. And because you raise your life condition, you can see the nature of your problems and your sufferings from a higher perspective. And so that's kind of why I chant, because it gives me a higher vibrating awareness of how to overcome my suffering. But it also feels really good. And I think that you can tell when someone has chanted and when they don't chant in my world, because, you're just more energetic, you're brighter, your demeanor shifts. I mean, I can tell the difference in my own face looking in the mirror between when I chant and when I don't, that I have more stress on my face. Oh, Gesundheit, bless you. And I do still say bless you. But, yeah, so it's just a really good practice of polishing your life like a diamond. And yeah, so.
But you have been practicing for the last 45 years, so still you are suffering that you have to overcome?
Yeah, I think we always have suffering. I think we have suffering from past lives. We have suffering from how we were raised. We have suffering from interactions with other people who may or may not do what we want them to do. We have people who treat us poorly in day-to-day world. We have interactions that we may pull on those sufferings from the past and create a continuation of a karmic situation through our reactions. So you can change a karmic cycle by reacting differently. But if we're not aware of the pattern, we can't necessarily change the pattern, which is why I chant, because chanting gives me an awareness of what the pattern is. It just raises my consciousness to a point where I can understand, oh, well, that's, because you're always looking to yourself for the solution, because everything starts with self anyway. Everything emanates out. We see things from our perspective. We create things from our perspective. So responsibility starts with us for our own personal lives. So in Buddhism, you say, okay, well, that person treated me poorly, and I keep getting treated poorly in that way. What is it about me that attracts that in? Because that's the key. You're reacting to something almost subliminally. Sometimes, like, your subconscious you don't always know in conscious awareness why that triggers you. But when you chant, you have the ability to bring that up like the lotus flower out of the muck and understand it and observe it. And then once you can see it, you go, oh yeah, well, I'm not treating myself kind enough. I need to really own my own beauty or something. Like when somebody treats you poorly, maybe you go, well, I deserve that. And then when you realize you didn't deserve that, I'm not going to be treated that way. I will stand up for myself. You've shifted that dynamic, just as a simple example of how to shift karma. So
basically, you'll suffer anyway. It doesn't matter if you chant or doesn't won't chant.
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of my particular brand of Buddhism, which is Nichiren Buddhism, it's a Japanese Buddhism. Uh, it's a very proactive Buddhism. It sounds kind of oxymoronic, but Buddhism, people think, oh, well, you're just at peace and you're pacifist. But this particular Buddhism is very proactive. We have an organization, and the organization is SGI, Soka Gakkai International, and we have a seat on the United Nations. We are a pro-peace lay organization, so it's made up of people just like me. It's not, we used to be affiliated with a temple, but there was a rift in the 90s and we separated from the temple. Not to get into any details, they can research it if they want to know, but basically it's a lay organization, and we have meetings in our homes. We have a community center, a brand new one here in downtown Orlando, and we get together and chant as a group, and it's a very resonant sound. If you've seen, I don't know if you've seen the movie What's Love Got to Do with It, Tina Turner, the Tina Turner movie. She was Buddhist. She chants the same phrase chanted the same phrase I chant. Suzanne Vega, who's a musician, Herbie Hancock is Buddhist, Orlando Bloom is this Buddhism. A lot of people, the young woman, well, she's now a woman, who was in Hocus Pocus, the Disney movie, her name is Vanessa Shaw. She is Buddhist. There are a lot of Buddhists out there that you don't necessarily realize they are, but yeah.
Yeah, I believe basically they just created this misconception. It's just peaceful. It is peaceful, but everything mostly it came from Vedas, all this Buddhism and other branches. And one
Mm-hmm.
of the biggest book is your Gita, Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavad Gita is about the war itself,
Okay.
but you can interpret more as a like mental war too, because in our, I mean, same thing. All this physical world, you can interpret it as in your mental world, how it is going, and you have to conquer those things. Because
Yeah.
even astrology and chanting is finally waking up your consciousness of what's going on in your core processor in the computer, something like that, basically. So
Right.
that only changes everything around you, and all those things happening to you, or you're attracted to it, then you change in your subconscious level.
Yeah, absolutely. And you change who you are as a person. You can change your path. You can change what you attract in, the kind of circumstances you attract. Just acknowledging in the way I do, acknowledging cause and effect in that way puts your life in rhythm with the positivity of cause and effect. Now, you can also run into things that trigger you, like I said, but when you get that negativity, then it's your opportunity to polish your life and clear out that karma. So it's a practice of changing karma, basically. That's a strong central focus of why we chant, is to change our karma, which it's kind of unique to this particular Buddhism.
But negativity would be good too, because all these people you're talking about, Buddha or Rama or Krishna, they came to the earth when there was too much negativity in order to lighten that, basically.
Yes. Yeah. So I think definitely we are at a spiritual expansion point
Mm-hmm.
and an intellectual expansion point. Like, we're awakening our mindsets and our awareness of things beyond just the material world. And the ego itself is very materialistic. And there it is.
Gita, it says about the war was going on, and at the time Arjun was confused why I need to do the war,
Yeah.
because the war was against his cousin, his grandfather, and all those. And then Krishna told him like, no, we are born for the war, and
Mm,
your duty is to do the action. Don't worry about the past, don't worry about the future, and those kind of stuff.
interesting. Wow. It just got deep in here.
Shadow
Yeah.
bringing a deep, all this deep knowledge of the planets.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think Pluto definitely going into Aquarius. So Aquarius is the sign of the humanitarian, and Pluto is the planet of strategy. And it can be associated with war. He is it's kind of like he will burn it down and start over. So what happens with the Pluto energy slash Scorpio energy is you try, it's a fixed sign, so it doesn't give in very easily. And you try to do something the way you see. And Scorpios are the psychologists of the zodiac. So they're very aware of human sociological interactions and dynamics. And so they're really good strategists. But when you go after something and planets change, people change, ideas change, times change, and even ways of interacting and dynamics with people change. That we have been in a time where, so many people have told me, well, you've got to get a real job, or you've got to do things like, honestly, they've treated me like I don't know how to get a job. And I'm like, I know how to get a job, and I know what modern traditional society sees as, the path to success. That's just not my path. And so even the idea that work hard, get the house, get the car, have the family, retire, die, that dynamic is shifting. That's an ego dynamic now. And as we grow into a broader understanding of things, we go through the cycle of astrology. The cycle of astrology is going from Aries, Taurus, Gemini, around the zodiac to the last signs, which is Aquarius and Pisces. So the last three are Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and Pluto was in Capricorn in Western astrology. And so it was about structure, it was about ambition, it was about materialism, it was about homogeny. I noticed everything is beige and gray. That's Capricorn. It wants things very low key, repetitive, traditional, reliable, rooted in it. It's the structure of the tree, and it's just very stable energy. Aquarius, and in the zodiac, you go from one sign to the next, and every successive sign has something that the sign before didn't have. It's like it makes up for the blind spot. So Capricorn's very stable and structured, which kind of makes up for Sagittarius, the sign before it. It was very wild and freedom loving. Capricorn said, no, let's settle down and be serious. And then the sign after is also very freedom loving and genius and expansive mindset, where Capricorn's like, don't mess with the details. Don't mess with like other extraneous things. I just want to focus on literal. If you say it, then do it. If you are responsible, then that's what's valued with Capricorn. But Aquarius is very much genius based, but it's also mind expansive, quantum thinking energy. So we go from this very kind of blindered way of looking, tunnel vision and stability, to this broad, open, humanitarian, environmentalist, what's the word, with activist kind of energy. Yeah.
So I was reading today itself, like when whatever is your ascendant or your first house, if that Lord is sitting in there, it's considered to be very powerful.
If which sign, which planet?
Any sign is your first house, and that Lord is still, that planet is sitting in that house itself. It's very strong.
I have a Moon Neptune conjunction in Scorpio in the first house, so it's pretty powerful.
No, but in the first house is Scorpio, if Mars would be sitting, it will be more stronger for you. But the reason why they were saying is basically the first house Lord sitting in the first house itself makes you more adaptable, changeable. You'll be ready to change things.
Absolutely. If Mars specifically were in a Scorpio, it's more about taking the action on the strategy, taking the action, knowing the psychology of really kind of dabbling and playing with people psychologically. So it can be, and it's very covert, because Scorpio is the ruler of the underworld. The sign rules the underworld.
Yeah,
so
like in the natal chart, or it's called the Kal Purus chart, which is like starting from the sign 1, like from Aries and onwards. So the first house, like 10th house you were describing, exactly same thing, because 10th house is for your job, your profession. You have to be narrow-minded, focused. 11th house is the gain. So again, whatever the work you'll be doing, you'll be gaining from there. 12th house is your mokshas, like liberating from everything basically. So like
Yeah,
whatever the things you accumulated on your computer, now it's slowing down, so you have to wipe it out and clean it up. Then
exactly.
so
Yeah,
yes,
so you've got so much, and I think what I like about astrology is it's kind of like making food and cooking in the kitchen. Like you're always throwing in new and different ingredients because the planets are constantly moving and they're all moving at their own pace. And then some of them retrograde over the summer and they go direct. And so there's like all this constant dancing and dynamic that creates new scenarios between people and in the material world. So, for me, I've got chills just talking to you about this. And that's my sign that I'm on the right track. Like when I get chills, I know I've hit on something spirit agrees with, like strongly. So, when you mix in all these different movements, I mean, people don't always believe in astrology, but they believe the tides happen. They believe on full moons, people act more lunatic, and, lunatic is based in the moon.
and the
So,
biggest thing is basically they are not even aware of all those days are based on the planets only. One of the
yes,
another interesting thing I heard today is basically like anytime you meet somebody like you, so I'll say, hey Shelly, how you doing? But we hardly ask ourselves. Shelly ask Shelly itself, like, hey Shelly, what are you doing? How are you doing?
good point.
That's what is astrology basically. You are knowing about yourself, which we don't
Yeah.
even know about that basically.
And it's funny because I know a lot of mediums and psychics, they're like, I can't read myself. I just heard it yesterday. A medium said, I can't do it for myself, but I can read my own chart. I can look at it. Of course, I do have biases and things I wish would happen, but I can look at it in a very practical way and go, wow, I'm having a Saturn transit, which I am. I'm in my Saturn return right now. Fortunately, I think it's done, but my second Saturn return. So I can go, wow, I'm going to focus on the things that Saturn and Pisces want me to do, which is spirituality, spiritual growth, creativity. I'm going crazy with ideas. I'm sorry, I think I've got some cars racing by. Yes, it's a very noisy neighborhood. Honestly, I'm near the firehouse too, and a lot of cops, so it's always got sound out there. But yeah, I can look at a chart and go, wow, that's coming up. Oh, that aspect, like right now, I like Aquarius energy, but it's going to be a negative aspect to my stellium and Virgo for the whole time almost that it's there. So that's going to be something I have to wake up to. And it's definitely going to affect my friendships, my awareness of family and community and connectedness. I mean, I'm at a point in the next 20 years where my parents will probably transition. And I've got Pluto going into the house of family. So that literally means ending death and rebirth of family. So, and it's also a detachment. So I'm a little bit scared about where that comes in. But, it's all growth, learning and growth.
So if one line, if you have to define about yourself from your astrological chart, like what was the purpose of this life? I mean, you came for,
To create
and how you see it,
and learn.
how you see it, which planet tells you, which house tells you, and I mean, how you become.
Leo, the sign of Leo at my midheaven, where your life purpose is. So, and I also have Venus 4 degrees away from going into the house of career and the Leo midheaven. So Venus is what you desire, what you love. And I have Neptune in the first house, which is the psychology of expression and desire and imagination, because Neptune rules imagination. And it's a really strong ruler of an artist energy and archetype. I have Jupiter in Taurus. Jupiter is expansive. Taurus also is ruled by Venus and art and beauty. I have a lot of, there's not just one thing. There's a lot of stuff in my chart
It
that.
is, but what you told me, I don't remember your chart, but what you told me, like moon is the one which is your heart. What you said
Yeah.
is for the purpose of this thing, and you said it's in the Scorpio. So 6, 8,
Yeah.
6, 8, and 12th houses are mysterious houses. It is called 6 more about the services, 8 mysteries about the service itself. So you came to give things to this world.
Yeah. Yeah, that's my Virgo in the 11th house, the networking house, and the house of community. And Virgo is the well, not humanitarian, it's more of the service and helper energy. So, four planets, including Uranus and Pluto in that house, I'm very much a humanitarian, I'm very much a giver. And, fortunately, I have Neptune in the first house next to the moon. It gives me more of a unconditionally loving mother energy, that I really give to people, I think. So,
fourth house, you have Piscean over there, right?
fourth house is ruled by 6 degrees. Let me see. Nope, that's not my chart. I flipped it. Hang on a second. I'll switch them. Which house did you say? Fourth. Yeah, 6 degrees Aquarius. And yeah, I have Saturn at the last degrees of my house of home and family, that house, the fourth house, Saturn is there. And so it's restriction. It's restriction of my artistic creative voice. And that's true. My mother never really supported that side of my life. So, yeah. But it's also the desire to create a structure around something you're attracted to. So that's what my second Saturn return's all about.
Piscean is in 12th? I mean, the fifth house?
It's 4 degrees of Pisces ruling my fifth house. Yeah.
Which is like majority of them is in fourth house, Piscean, right?
Yeah. The majority of Pisces is in my fifth house. 4 degrees of Pisces is in my fourth. Okay. And Aquarius, the majority is Aquarius in my house of home and family. Yeah. And Aries. So we're going to be having in Western astrology, Neptune will be going into Aries soon. And also, let's see, something else is switching. I think Mars will be there not too long. Mars goes fairly quickly. So it'll be in Aries. That'll be really fun.
Now I was just interpreting like the fourth house is basically your house. I mean, your place of residence, home. But Aquarius is basically gain. And Pisces is basically, again, moksha. So astrology or liberation, chanting and all. So at your home, you'll be chanting and you'll be gaining out of benefit from that.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah, I really look forward to when the planets change signs out of these houses. I mean, it's good to be in the energy. It's like diving in the pool, but it's really nice to get out and put a nice cozy towel around you and feel that kind of relaxed energy when you get out of the pool. And that's kind of what happens when the planets shift out of the sign they're in and go to the next one. It's like, here's a nice warm towel. Here are all the benefits. Like, yay.
Great session for the first time. So,
yeah.
We'll do more on each topics, or we'll understand more the differences between whatever has been created as Western or Eastern. I still believe fundamentals and foundations are same. So, but what I see is like difference is only, I mean, when we have a deep dive, then only we understand more about it. Because I see in Vedic, it's already they have branched it out so many different sections, and a good astrologer, they learn everything basically. And even like one of the book, I have English and Hindi both basically. So yeah, actually this book itself, in the Hindi, it tells about almost weather predictions and how the crops will be doing and all those this stuff there.
Oh, okay.
So
awesome. Well, I admire your tenacity to understand that, because to me it seems very daunting, and I don't know why. Maybe because it's also another language that I have.
No, it is daunting because it's just like it is a proper science and lots of things like that. That's why there are lots of books are written and lots of mathematical formulas. Because same thing as I showed you earlier, like on the NASA websites also there are formulas to calculate those planets and how they'll be going back and forth and basically. So it's not like one day job, and it's just like if you relate with any medical science or engineering and all, 1 year of engineering, I mean, what you can say, can you get your engineering things done by an engineer who says that he has done just 1 year?
Well, I don't know. I can barely take next week, so
so yeah, it's a lot. That's why they have a structured, like when I joined this courses, so it's a 2 years course, 4 semesters, but 2 years is again is nothing. Just like even after 4 years of engineering was nothing, we just graduate from there as a naive engineer, but it gives us some basis, and then it gives a view also, like people will start seeing me as engineer, then brings a confidence too. Like